Pre-access at Carver, we run 3 different qualifications in conjunction with NOCN, and they're an ideal choice for students who have no formal qualifications to begin their academic journey. So it really is a good stepping stone to prepare those students with the essential study skills that will help them with future study. I'd now like to hand over to Shelley at NOCN, which is the National Open College Network, to provide you with some more information about how they work as an organisation and more information on the qualifications that we deliver in conjunction with them. Over to you, Shelley. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for that lovely introduction. As Emma mentioned, we work with Carver on their pre-access qualifications to help those learners that don't have qualifications move into an access program. Georgia, can I have the next slide, please? So NOCN Group is a charity, and our core aims are to help learners reach the potential and obviously help their organizations thrive. We have a range of different business units within our group. We are regulated, we have regulated qualifications both in the UK and internationally as well. We offer endpoint assessment, assured short courses, smart job cards, assessment services, endorsed programs as well. And at NOCN, we are very passionate about the power of education and the impact that this can have on learners' lives and helping them to achieve their career and personal aspirations. So really, we are just about building awareness and promoting the positive value of education, as well as apprenticeship and the different skills that learners and subsequently employees would need. Could I have the next slide, please? So we have qualifications in a range of different sectors. I won't read them all out to you, but we have a large amount of qualifications in constructions and the building environment, but we also have qualifications in education and training, hospitality, health and social care, sciences and management and productivity. So these are the different sectors where we have qualifications and also EPAs at some points as well. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the qualification that Emma has been referring to is what we is our skills for employment, training and personal development. And we affectionately call it the SET PD. So if I shorten it to that, that's what we call it. It's our SET PD qualification. And this qualification is there to provide students with an introduction to working in a range of different sectors, but also give them some transferable vocational skills. For example, problem solving or time management. And once the learner has achieved their SET PD, they can then obviously progress on to their access qualification or a higher level qualification or apprenticeship. So within this qualification, we have different groups of units, which I'll talk to you about shortly, but also a range of different sectors where learners can get a taster of these sectors, and if this is where they wish to progress their careers. There's added value in terms of the employability skills, which is built into the qualification, which learners can then take into the workplace. The qualification is available from entry level all the way up to level 3, and is available in the size award, certificate and diploma. But this will really depend on the units that are chosen and the qualification and the number of credits that the learner chooses. And obviously that will be based on each individual learner and what their progression routes are. In terms of assessment, these qualifications are centre assessed. So it could be creating a portfolio of evidence. You might be using case studies, question and answer sessions, role plays, reports, reflective journals, practical demonstrations, observations. And again, that will be really dependent on the unit, the combination of units that are chosen. So this is just a breakdown of what the qualification looks like. So as I said, there's 3 different size qualifications. So you got the award, certificate, and diploma, and then different levels, except for diploma, which doesn't have a level 3 qualification. So depending on what size qualification you go for will depend on how many credits you need to achieve in the qualification. So for example, if the learner wants to do a level 2 certificate qualification, this is a 21 credit qualification. And there are rules of combination, and all of this is detailed in our qualification specification. But if a learner wanted to do, for example, a level 2 certificate program, they would need to achieve 3 credits from Group A, which is the personal development group of units, and then 3 credits from Group B, which is the vocational support group of units, and then they can take the remaining 15 credits across a range of different groups, which include what we call, groups D to K, and these include literacy and numeracy, and then the different sectors as well. So if they're looking to move into the health and social care, they will then choose units from the health and social care group of units. So if you go onto our website, you will see our qualification is laid out for you. And one of the best, oh, sorry, could you move on to the next slide? I'm so sorry. I'm following my screen, not your screen. I'm so sorry about that.
Sorry, there was a few things there to click. I thought had moved on.
No, it was me. Sorry, I clicked my screen and I forgot to ask you to do yours at the same time. If you go onto our website, you'll see a breakdown of all the structure, the units within the qualification. And one of the great things about this qualification is we have over 250 units to choose from. And it's a really agile qualification to meet the needs of your learners, and also meet the local skills needs as well. What's just important to keep in mind is the combination of units and the rules of combination. But on our website, like I said, depending on the level of qualification and the size, you'll be able to see the structure in the units and also our qualification specification. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Oh, and can you click again? Sorry. Thank you. So as I mentioned, there's two different units. You've got Group A, which is your personal development unit. And as you can see, there's a range of different units you can choose from in there. So for example, it could be things like decision-making skills, critical thinking, etc. And then in terms of Group B, the learner would choose units from this group based on where they wanted to move into in terms of their career or their next step in terms of their learning journey. So for example, if they're moving into health and social care sector, they might decide to choose the health promotion unit within this group. But again, it's just keeping in mind those rules of combination. But that's what's great about this qualification, is that it's really flexible and agile to meet the needs of your learner, to support them in their career aspirations, but also in their next steps in the learner journey. So thank you. So in order to deliver this qualification, there is an expectation that the staff that is delivering this qualification has a demonstrable level of expertise. They should have some experience within the sector pathway that they are going to deliver. So for example, business administration or health and social care. There is an expectation that they have experience at the same level of the training that's being delivered. And we do expect your teachers to have a teaching qualification up to a minimum of level 3, or actually working on that to be able to achieve in their first 12 months of undertaking their role. But again, that's something that you would discuss with your EQA for this qualification. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of this qualification and how it can be used to support your pre-access program. Are there any questions? Do we want to take them now, or do you want to leave them to the Emma?
I believe Gareth has got a question.
Okay.
So Gareth, if you'd like to come off mute and ask your question.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's just to do with funding, really, and it kind of how it works in relation to, obviously, our access students take out a loan usually to pay for to pay for their access course. So is this funded before that, or how does it affect their loan? And yeah,
right, exactly. Okay, in terms of funding, it's really difficult to answer that question, and I'll tell you why. Is because depending on where you are in the country, depending on your mayoral combined authority, you may have different pots of funding available to you. There may be project money available to you. What I would always suggest is that you look at the LARS, so the Learning Aims Reference Services. This is a funded qualification. So if you go onto the LARS, you will be able to see what groups this is funded for. But I also would suggest that you get hold of your mayoral combined authority and ask them what funding is available for your learners within your area. And also if there is access to any project money that may be able to support them as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
No problem at all. Are there any other questions at this stage?
No, it doesn't appear that we have any further questions. Thank you ever so much, Shelley, for doing that presentation for us.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Emma, for inviting us along.
You're more than welcome. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you. So you can see that Shelley highlighted some of the key benefits of running pre-access qualifications, and we'll touch base on those in a couple of slides' time as well. But I hope that gave you a really good introduction into the three different qualifications that we run. So we've got the award, the certificate and the diploma, which are for the skills for employment training and personal development. You can find further information on the NOCN website with regards to the different units that are available. But CAVA have also produced a guidance for providers for pre-access qualifications. So we'll make sure that you all get a copy of that after today's webinar as well. And then you would be able to get access, click on the links, and that will take you directly to where you'll be able to find the links on the NOCN website. So Georgia, can you please make a note that I'll be sending that information out as well? Thank you. So CAVA, in terms of how long we've been running pre-access, so we've been running pre-access programs since the academic year 2017-2018. During that time, we've had 11 colleges register students with us, and we've had a total of 775 students register. And up until September 2023, 234 of those students have progressed onto access to HE diplomas within 18 months of completing a pre-access course. So you can see there the benefit already that's coming through from this slide is that pre-access learners are using it as a stepping stone and a progression route onto the access to HE diplomas. But also, as Shelley identified, there's personal development units within the qualifications, and there's also employability units as well. So those students that haven't progressed onto access to HE diplomas have been able to access onto other areas to support them, i.e. apprenticeships or moving into the workplace as well. Next slide, please, Georgia. So this slide here just demonstrates the number of students that were enrolled on pre-access programs, the number of students who have achieved over the years, and then those who have progressed on to access to HE diplomas. So it's just basically giving the information in a different format. You can see that generally 50% of students who achieve pre-access do go on to progress onto the access to HE diplomas. And in a couple of slides along, I'll share with you the statistical information of how these pre-access students perform once they're on the access to HE diploma. Next slide, please, Georgia. So just to confirm some of the benefits of running pre-access that was picked up from the information as well that Shelley has provided us. Students have the opportunity to learn transferable skills. So the skills that they're learning are essential study skills that can then help them within their next steps. Pre-access really helps students achieve their personal and academic aspirations, And it helps them grow in confidence as well. We need to remember that a lot of our pre-access students and our access to HE students might have been out of education for a long time. So for those students that are potentially not 100% sure about what they want to do, this provides them with an ideal taster. So it gives them the opportunity to get back into learning, to learn those essential skills like time management, organisational skills, problem solving, even self-awareness skills as well come into that, and then have the opportunity to develop their communication and written skills as well. The key thing, and I think one of the biggest benefits of the qualifications that we offer with NOCN is the fact that they're an introduction to subject areas. So as Shelley mentioned, you've got the introduction to vocational areas. So if somebody is thinking about potentially enrolling on an access to HE diploma in health and social care or science, by taking some of the pre-access qualifications, depending on how you structure your course and which units you give them access to, it could give them a really good insight into the subject knowledge for that area. So it'll give them a taster to see if they really want to do science or health and social care, for example, but it will also give them some of the basic awareness and understanding of what's involved in that subject to then help them make informed decisions and help them progress onto the access to HE diploma with some subject knowledge already. It provides an opportunity for students to develop their literacy and numeracy skills. So there are numerous literacy and numeracy skills units within the pre-access qualifications. So again, this could be used for those students who haven't necessarily achieved GCSEs in English and maths or functional skills. And it gives them an opportunity to work towards those skills and learning, being able to achieve those qualifications. But it also could be used as a refresher. So if students haven't done English and maths for a long time, but it does form part of like the science access to HE diploma, if there's numeracy units in there, again, it will help them to refresh those skills. And once students are on the access to HE diploma, we've found that it can help student retention and achievement as well. Next slide, please, Georgia. So just to share some statistics with you, you can see there that former pre-access students who enrol on access to HE diplomas tend to achieve better than the CAVA average in terms of retention, achievement and pass rates. Next slide, please, Georgia. I'd now like to take this opportunity just to share with you a testimonial from one of our providers who currently runs pre-access. And I'm just going to pick out some keywords because I think the keywords in this testimony echo some of the key benefits that we've been talking about already this morning. So the provider who runs the pre-access course thought that this course was perfect for students who left school with a few formal qualifications. It also helps students improve their confidence and self-esteem, as well as developing practical academic skills. Pre-access students are well prepared, both emotionally and academically, for the intensity and rigour of Level 3 access to HE diploma courses, having completed a pre-access course. And we all know how difficult and challenging and intense access to HE diplomas can be. I'd now like to take this opportunity to hand over to Lizzie from Peterborough College, who's part of the Inspire Educational Group, who is going to share her experience of running pre-access qualifications. Thank you, Lizzie.
Hiya. Thanks for having me come and talk. So my contact details just there if anybody wants to get in touch afterwards. And I just wanted to spend sort of 5-10 minutes giving quite a transparent sort of overview of how we've been getting on in terms of data, what the study program looks like on a day-to-day level as well, and as a study program. So next slide, please. So what we chose to do at the college was a couple of qualifications that form a whole program. So we actually do the certificate in skills for employment training and personal development, what a mouthful, and the award afterwards. So we do the certificate up until about Easter time. And then after Easter, we then move on to the award just for the final short term. And that's a way that we found works quite well for any students that are struggling or it looks like they're not going to make the whole journey. at that point at Easter time, there is potential for them to drop off if they need to, and then we start the award for the final bit. And only the students that do both the certificate and the award are the ones that we then take forward into the access. So it's a good way of filtering out students kind of at the later stages if they've really pushed hard but they're just not going to make it. In addition to those 2 quals, we also ask the students to do GCSE maths and English or. So sometimes they come with one and just need the other one, and in which case they just have a sort of a free period in their timetable where they can just do their own studying. We have tutorials each week, and we just do one-to-ones. So we aim to see each student maybe 3 or 4 times a year for a quick sort of 15-minute catch-up to see how they're getting on. And some students who need to have a GCSE science for university, we also allow them to do a GCSE science alongside. So that's more an exceptional case. So for example, students who want to go on to do midwifery, they need the English, the maths and the science. So they'll do that as well. Next slide. So this has already been covered really. So I find choosing the units to be quite an easy process. It's quite straightforward in the guidance, what you need to pick and what kind of rules there are. I sort of advise when you're picking the units, don't just go by the title, actually go into the units and have a good read through to see what it covers, because they all do slightly different things, but they maybe sound quite similar. So definitely something when you're planning is spend a good amount of time really considering that. Next slide. So this is the units that we decided for those 2 sort of main quals. So our students do study skills and communicating information, and actually those 2 are assessed sort of holistically together. So they complete sort of one portfolio, but that covers tasks for both of those units, and that works quite well. Improving learning and performance is all about sort of thinking for the future, assessing learning styles. It goes quite well with the tutorials, which is all about setting targets. Data handling, we find complements the GCSE maths. So it means they have not just one maths lesson a week, but they have a second one within the department. And we find that sort of then boosts their maths performance in the GCSEs. And then they all do a biology unit, life processes. And then in the college, we have 2 main access diplomas that we then fill them into the following year. So if they're going to do science in access, then they then do a chemistry and a physics unit. And if they're going to go do humanities and social science, they do a mental health and a sociology unit. And we find that's working quite well. We're looking next year into sort of more branching into a sort of a nursing pathway for access. And we're looking at sort of how we can, again, have the units so that works well for nurses as well. And then the award that starts after Easter works really well for getting them ready for UCAS applications the following year, because as part of investigating a career, they look into making sure they're sort of going for the right thing at uni. So the students find that quite useful. And then they do a research project as well. It's quite science geared, but there is potential to sort of go into more of a psychology project if they wanted to for the social scientists. And that's quite a nice way to finish the year. And that's quite a good unit because it gives them a sort of a taster for what they do on the access, where they do a major project or a dissertation project or something like that later. And we've even found some students sort of base their access project on what they did on pre-access if they found it was interesting, and then they sort of scale it up to level 3. So that's quite supportive as well. Next slide. So in terms of the timetable, we bring them in 3 days a week, and they're quite short days. So they come in at 9:15 and they're gone by 2:30. So they do English and maths as a sort of a block on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then they have a kind of a diploma or an award lesson just in the afternoons. And then Fridays we have tutorials and then 2 of the main qual lessons, and that sort of moves around depending on the time of year. The reason for that is obviously some students are dropping off children in the morning at schools, and it just takes the edge off the mornings a little bit for everybody. And then by 2:30 again, we find that again they've got time to get back off to the schools to collect people. And those that do not have that responsibility, they have the option to stay behind and work in college if they want to. And we do also offer on Wednesdays a sort of drop-in support session where I'm usually available in a room, and they know they can always come and find me if they want to talk about anything. And that gets used by pre-access and access also. Next slide. So in terms of the sort of types of students that we sort of look to target, so we take students who are 18 years and older on the course. in theory they could be younger, but then it doesn't work in, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. It doesn't work in terms of progression, because then they have to be 19 by the sort of the end of that year so that they can move on to the Access course next. The only thing to bear in mind if you're taking a mixture of 18-year-olds and 19-year-old plus is the 19-year-olds have no restrictions in terms of the hours. They can do as much or as little as they want. Sorry. But the younger students, they have to have a minimum number of hours that they study as part of their program. That number was, it sort of goes up and down a little bit, but that tends to work out if they're doing the GCSEs alongside and the tutorials. The only problem sometimes comes is if they're 18 and they only need to do one of the GCSEs, then they have a bit of a hole in the timetable, and we sometimes have to fill that with something else. So just something to consider. And as was already mentioned, it's works really well for students who are not qualified for Access yet. And we have the odd student who comes who is qualified for Access, but they don't feel like they're ready yet. For example, they hold foreign qualifications that are equivalent, but they just feel like they want to spend a year studying in English before they then come and do the Access course. So we've had one or two like that. And the other thing is oftentimes it's students who want a full-time study program as opposed to doing part-time GCSEs, which would also get them progressing onto Access. They actually want that full-time experience where they're with a group and they do sort of multiple lessons with them. So in terms of the entry requirements, we're quite flexible, but ideally we ask for a functional skill level 1 in English and maths or low GCSE grades. But it is a case-by-case basis, and obviously we'll consider foreign qualifications and things like that as well. In terms of advertising, we write the sort of full name of the qualification on the website, but at the beginning of it we do write pre-Access, so that when they do a search on the website, a new applicant, if they type in Access, pre-Access will then come up on the website search as well, so they see it, because otherwise they would never think to search for certificate in skills, blah, blah, blah. It's not something they'd even know what it is. Next slide. Actually, sorry, if I just go back one other thing to say is something that's coming up is in other departments with the T-levels that are coming through, is because the T-levels are requiring quite high entry requirements and a lot of the BTECs are disappearing from what colleges can offer. I'm finding there's other departments coming to me sort of asking about this pre-Access as a way of allowing the 16, 17-year-olds to sort of try and boost their grades before, you know, doing an Access later. So it's something that, you know, people seem to be asking me more and more about with the T-levels coming in. So I don't know, just confusing area, but something to think about. Sorry, next slide. So in terms of the types of students that we get, it changes each year. So I've just compared this year with last year. So we've got more younger students this year compared to last year, but you know, on the whole, you can sort of see a breakdown there. And they tend to be mostly female as well. And we do get a couple of high needs or EHCP learners each year as well. And we find that they do quite well on the course. They're quite well supported because it's a slightly lower level. And oftentimes they've already been in college doing other things for previous years. So it just sort of buys them that extra year before they then go on to the Access. Next slide. So in terms of funding, I know that was a question that came up and I think it's different for everybody, but I just had a bit of a look, and our college is charging £724 for the study programme this year. The English and Maths GCSEs are free, obviously, but that's kind of what it's charging for the whole thing. And these percentages I've just realised don't add up at all. But as a bit of a breakdown, 33% are funded by the adult education budget for combined Peterborough and Cambridgeshire Authority. It works out to be, I think, more like 60-something% that are funded by the Education and Skills Funding Agency. So they are the 18-year-olds that we have on the course. And they are also the EHCP students that we have on the course. They fall into that category. There's only 1 or 2 each year that have to fund themselves, so what we describe as full cost. And even out of those, there was a student last year, and she was full cost because she was an asylum seeker, so she wasn't eligible for public funding yet, but she then actually got a grant from the college so that she could pay for it. So on the whole, most of them are not having to get loans or pay out of their pockets. Most of them appear to be funded in one way or another, so that's quite encouraging always. Next slide. So in terms of our data, we have reasonably small groups. It sort of goes up and down. So you can see from the second row, so we've got 18 students this year. Achievement, again, it sort of waves up and down. So, around about the 80s on average. Retention is pretty good on the whole. And we're finding that we've gotten a bit braver with sort of removing students that we don't feel that are going to sort of succeed by the end. And attendance has been gradually improving as well. I think that's probably because we're getting better and better at teaching it. The teachers know what they're doing. We're becoming more confident in running that qual, so the student experience probably gets better as well. And then progression to access, again, it's variable depending on the year, but you can sort of see a breakdown there of our data, which is so on 60% on average seems to be how it works. I think for that 100% year, it was a much smaller cohort, so they were able to get through. And so one other thing about the progression is in order to progress to access, we need them to pass, as I said, the certificate, the award, and both the GCSE English and Maths. So with the progression, as much as it seems quite low, it might be because they've passed the certificate, they've passed the award, but then they bombed out on the English and Maths, and that's what they need for university. We tend to take them if they are perhaps just one grade under or a few marks off, and then we allow them to resit that GCSE whilst on access, the sort of November resit. But the ones that are 2 grades or lower, then at that point we'll say, sorry, take another year and then join the access the following year. And we see them and they do come back sometimes the sort of 2 years later and then rejoin access, which is quite nice. Okay, next slide.
We actually have a question. Are you happy just for us to ask you a quick question now, or would you rather wait till the end?
I can answer now. Yeah.
I am
Great,
so
Liz,
sorry
you can
to
unmute
interrupt
yourself.
you very, very quickly. We offer a functional skills level 2 for our adult learners who find the GCSE it's just not accessible to them, and sometimes they might start on a GCSE and by end of September realise it's not suitable, so we switch them. So how might that is that something that you do, or do you just say it has to be the GCSE?
We at the moment say the GCSE just because we find it brings them up to a much higher standard by the time they're on access. We did in the past used to have a screening assessment at the start of the year, and if they did functional skill, if they came up as a certain score, they'd be directed down functional skills, and if they did very well, they'd be put on the GCSE. And we actually found that upset them quite a lot at the start of the year because they sort of felt like they were being put into like high and low ability groups, and that kind of dented their confidence. So that was sort of one reason that we stopped that. And the second thing is, I think because of the types of courses they go into, a lot of the degree courses ask for the GCSEs as well. So we just want to give them the best chance of progression. But it is something I ponder often is, should we give them the option? I think it really depends on the universities. I hear every year they say, oh yes, we're going to accept functional skills, and then you'll check the following year and they're still not accepting functional skills for certain courses. So the GCSE is working well, but yeah, I do wonder if then it affects performance, but I think it does mean we get a higher caliber of progressors. So it kind of works in terms of the next year, even if it means they have a hard pre-access year.
Okay, no, that's great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Liz. I'll move on now for you, Lizzie.
Okay, I'm nearly done. So in terms of sort of summarising really our experience, we find running the actual qualification is quite comfortable. We have a lot of autonomy as assessors to, plan how we're going to teach it, when we're going to assess. We get to write our own assessments. So there's quite a lot of freedom there to sort of interpret the assessment criteria and think about how we want to then assess the students, which is quite nice. In terms of training staff to teach on it, it was very easy because it's very similar paperwork to all the Carver documents that we're used to using for access, and it's basically the same as marking an ungraded access unit. All of the units are achieved or not achieved, and actually we sort of follow the same sort of rules in terms of allowing one resubmission, and then we make a really big deal of it if they need to have a third go, which basically means it doesn't happen. So in terms of staff kind of jumping on board, there's quite limited staff training needs for it. And then the moderation is also quite low demand for us. So we're only requested we have one sort of visit, if you like, per year, where we just send over a sample. And again, that's quite supportive in terms of the feedback we get. So it's all just about helping to improve. For the first few years, the sampling is a bit more intensive because the whole cohort gets sampled rather than just a small selection of the students. And I guess that's just to sort of check standards are where they should be. So that's just something to be aware of, that in the beginning, you know, that puts quite a lot of pressure on the course leaders to gather all of that documentation at the end of the year and make sure it's ready to go. And in terms of going back to the GCSEs, but the whole course really is, it helps us really prepare our students for access. And I don't know if this is cause and effect or if it's just the fact the access is getting better as well, but looking at comparing the years before we did pre-access on average and the average of after pre-access, we found we've jumped from 75% to 91% achievement on the access courses. And is it because we're preparing our students better in that pre-year rather than what we used to do, where we'd sort of take on students with a kind of questionable quals, we weren't sure if they were ready, whereas now the students sort of can move that. And also in the first few weeks, we've got a place to put them. If they come onto access, if they're really struggling, we could suggest they sort of drop back for a year as well. So we're finding, as much as the data is not, you know, fantastic for pre-access, it really helps us with the access data later. And it's actually just really nice to see students not just over 9 months, but we see them over that 2 years instead, because access, it feels so fast and furious, doesn't it? They come in September and they're gone by June and you don't know what's happened. And it's nice to see those students for a little bit longer and you really get to know them really nicely, and that's a real pleasure. And I think final slide is just another sort of testimonial from Martina, one of our current access students who did pre-access last year, and she wrote this yesterday for us. And she just gushes about the course and she really values her time. And she was an example of a student who mainly was there just to sort of improve her English before she got going with the access course. And she really enjoyed it, and she really rates it. So I'll just let you read that. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions, I can answer quickly. That's me done.
That's
Thank
lovely.
you.
Thank you ever so much, Lizzie, for sharing that with us. It's really good to hear from Martina as well. That's a lovely testimony that you shared with us. I hope you'll all agree that Lizzie has given us a really good insight into what it's like running pre-access and has demonstrated that it's been a very positive experience. I think it was really helpful, and thank you, Lizzie, for sharing what your target group is and your student profile. And you've shared statistical information with us that demonstrates how pre-access has worked for you and the benefits of running it. Again, I think Lizzie demonstrated just how flexible the qualification is to meet the demands of the student needs. And that was nicely presented by the way that you demonstrated the different pathways that you have running and the different units that you run in to meet those pathways. So no, that was really, really insightful and really enjoyable to listen to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Before we move on, does anybody have any questions for Lizzie? Oh, okay, thank you. I think if we go to the next slide then, please, Georgia, thank you. So if you are interested in running pre-access, we ask you to complete a course proposal form. Georgia has just posted this into the Google chat for us, but again, it will be sent round. It's in the information that we send round after this webinar. As part of the course proposal form, you will need to identify which qualifications you'd like to run and give us an indication of student numbers, predicted student numbers. We also ask you for predicted dates and times of when you'll be running those qualifications. We ask you to provide information around the resources that you've got available for those and the information on the staff and the role that they'll be undertaking for those pre-access qualifications. We also ask you to highlight the educational aims of the programme, so your reasoning behind wanting to run pre-access. You will need to appoint a lead moderator, and that lead moderator needs to have a nationally recognised qualification in internal verification. And then Carver will carry out a desk-based paper approval process with you, taking into consideration the following. So checking the appropriateness of your lead moderator and their qualifications, looking about the programme design and the resources that you have available to run it. Sorry, it appears all of our speakers today, including me, have been victims of a tickly throat. I do apologise. And then obviously making sure that you're looking at the units that you've selected to run form a coherent programme of study and a correct and appropriate selection of rules of combinations and the units that apply that fall within those. So where Shelley mentioned this morning about making sure that there was a different number of credits, and from each section, so section A was personal development, you've got vocational support sections, you've got sections on literacy and maths. It's just making sure that the units that you've selected fall within the requirements of the rules of combination for the qualifications you've chosen, be it the award, the certificate or the diploma. Next slide, please, Georgia. So in terms of student registration, we actually ask the students to complete the registration form themselves, and this means that they are consenting to CAVA being able to process their data for the purpose of their studies. The form we ask you to send to CAVA within 25 working days of the start of the qualification, and CAVA will be actually responsible for registering your students onto the qualifications and also for registering the students as well, the units as well. And we use the NOCN registration system called Quartz, so that's where we store all our data. Gareth, you've got a question.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I might be being really dim here. Just obviously the qualifications through NOCN. I'm not sure if I quite like, but we register with CAVA for that.
Yeah, so it's actually NOCN who are going to provide you with the certification,
right.
But we've got direct claim status with NOCN. So we actually, you'll do all the engagement with CAVA, and then CAVA just work with NOCN at the end to certificate the students. And we obviously have quality assurance processes to make sure that we need to meet the NOCN requirements, and we report back to NOCN. So in terms of your engagement, it will all be through CAVA like you do for the HE diplomas. We're a bit like the middle person. So yeah, you deal with CAVA. CAVA deal with NOCN. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, I hadn't quite picked up on that. So all of the quality assurance and everything and the registration fees we pay to you? Yes,
that's correct. Yeah, so you won't actually have any direct input with NOCN. It's all done through CAVA.
Okay, cool.
Next slide, please, Georgia. So in terms of quality assurance, it's CAVA that carries out all the quality insurance as well. So we will make sure that you are carrying out internal moderation, because you are responsible for internally moderating the qualifications. Next slide, please, Georgia. So in terms of internal moderation, you will need to complete the same forms that you do for the access to HE diplomas. So all assessment plans and assignment briefs need to be internally moderated before they're issued to students. And again, we use pre-access internally moderation forms, but they are very similar to the ones that you experience with access. We ask you to complete a sampling form as well, and that will need to be sent over to CAVA when we request the sample, and the lead IM needs to complete the lead internal moderation report. So your sample size in-house is 5 students or 20% of portfolios, whichever is greater. You carry out internal moderation as you would for the access to HE diploma programs, but you just complete an additional report, which is the lead IM report. So on this lead internal moderation report, and again, links to these are all in the information that we will send out following the presentation. The lead internal moderator is confirming to say that they agree with the recommendations for the award of credit. They're also giving a brief summary and overview of the sample that they've selected and reviewed, and that they're identifying any areas of good practice and sharing that with CAVA, and they're also sharing college updates as well. So if there's been any barriers to learning or anything that you think's worked really well, or if you've had a change in tutors, for example, all that information goes on the lead IM report. And we also ask you to make a comment on any actions and recommendations that might have come been highlighted in the previous sample. So that will get sent over to CAVA with the sample of the students' work. So we'll contact you as you're coming towards the end of your course, just to say, please can you collect, and we sometimes ask for specific names of students, or it might be that we just ask you to send over a sample and you select that sample. So that comes to Carver along with your recommendations for award of credit, aka your RAC, and your lead IM report. And then my job role, I would carry out like an external moderation on those. And I'll review the samples, I'll review the information in the lead IM report, and then I will complete a risk rating report, which is sent to the colleges. And I confirm that we're happy for certification to take place. Next slide, please, Georgia. So certification, Jackie will apply for certification for you. She'll apply for that with NOCN, and certification takes approximately 10 working days. Once the certificates have arrived at the Carver office, we will then send them out to the colleges, to the nominated person who's going to receive the certificates, and we will send you a copy of your risk rating report as well. Next slide, please, Georgia. Oh, any question and answers. So we've now come to the opportunity within our presentation for us to pick up on any questions that you might have. Is there any questions that we can answer for you? Yes, Gareth.
Sorry.
No, don't apologise.
Been asking a lot. I quite like this qualification for our 16 to 18 learners as well. Oh, 16 to 19 learners as well, the NOCN one. Obviously, I assume if we wanted to put those learners on it, we would do it directly with them and not through yourselves, if we weren't using it as a pre-access, if that makes sense.
That's a very good question. That's something, Georgia, can you make a note of that question? And I'm going to clarify that with Flora, if that's okay, Gareth.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, if you're wanting to run it not as part of, to progress on to access to HE and not run it through us, there are potentially opportunities that you can do. I'm just not familiar with that and would hate to give you the wrong information. So what we'll do is we'll follow up with Flora, and then I'll get back to you via email if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. We run a vocational studies January start course, but it doesn't have as good unit choices as that does. So it was just a thought whilst we're on.
Yeah, no, definitely. If it is something that we can do for you and you run it through us, we'd love to do that. I just need to check the details behind it, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Cool.
Lovely. Thank you. Helen, you've got a raised hand.
I was literally just about to say, if Gareth wanted to discuss any of our qualifications directly, then I'd be more than happy to come in and have a meeting with you, Gareth. But I don't know how it works, whether, you know, with regards to no pre-access qualifications. Of course, I deal with the specialist quals, which can be anything to do with employability, functional skills, etc., health and social care. So I don't know whether you want me to put my details online or whether you want me to leave that with you, Emma.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for you to share contact details if you want, Helen.
Okay. Right. Shall I I'll take your details, Gareth, and I'll contact you directly. Thank you.
If it's easier, we can put the two of you in touch. We send a follow-up email anyway. So, Helen, if you'd like us to include your email for anyone with more questions or anything.
No, that'd be perfect. Thank you very much, Georgia.
Great. And Gareth, if you're happy for us to pass your... Oh, you've already done it. Fantastic. They were always happy to play the middleman.
Okay, I can see that a number of people have had to leave to go to teaching. So for those of you that are still here, thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. We will follow up with, like I say, additional information about the course and the qualifications. We'll also, we've got an evaluation form as well. If we can pop that in the email and just ask you to complete the evaluation form for us. But thank you for your attention. If there's any additional questions that you think of having left this webinar, please do get in touch. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to again say a very big thank you to our guest speakers. It was lovely to have you join us today and to find out further information from you all. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Nice to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Emma, is there